Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Sword Art Online review. This is going to be an arc overview for the Mother's Rosario arc, otherwise known as the Sleeping Knights arc. The last arc of SAO 2 and the last, I suppose, anime arc that we have so far. And yeah, I definitely would say this is my favourite arc from SAO 2. I think it beats out the GGO arc, mainly because I felt that the GGO arc kind of had a few too many episodes for what the story actually was. It kind of was paced a little bit off. Like they really extended some stuff out over the number of episodes that they had. Whereas this one, even though maybe it's not as is not trying to do as much as the GGO arc, and it's maybe not as like overall plot important, it it really used its episodes, I think, better. Kind of realized, okay, we don't need as many episodes as the GTO arc, and we're just going to cover what we need to and not go back over ground and kind of pace things kind of a bit slower than we need to. So I think that would be the main thing that I put in between them. But in general, I think this arc just was really important for the show to have. It was important for the show to have an arc that focused on Asuna rather than Kirito, just because, yes, in the ALO arc, in the GGO arc, she wasn't really that much of a focus, and it was kind of all Kirito and not so much her. So I completely understand and respect the decision to, like, okay, let's give Asuna an arc where she's the focus and Kirito's kind of the supporting character. And I liked how that was done because it allowed you to really get much deeper into Asuna as a character, which we got in the original Aincrad arc, but we haven't really got a lot since then. And this arc works quite well, I feel, as kind of like, okay, in the ALO arc, we got kind of Kirito adapting to being back in the real world and seeing what his kind of life is like outside the game. Now we get to see Asuna do that. Plus, just in general, get to know what her life is like. Like, we know, okay, her father, and she comes from a rich family and stuff like that, but that's about all we knew going into this arc. This arc gives us so much more detail on that, and what they deal with here, I think, was very effective. And so I think that's definitely the best place to start in terms of getting in depth on this, is Asuna as the kind of focus and the character arc that she goes through. Basically, what this arc for her does is it really well, I think, explains the shift in her character from who she was in the Aincrad arc compared to who she is now. And I think having the Excalibur arc in the middle of these two worked really well to show Asuna and her new role within the group, in that she doesn't need to be the Knights of the Bloodout second in command. She doesn't need to be that level anymore. She can take a more supporting role and allow her friends to do all the kind of main stuff, Kirito and the others. And this arc really well explains that that's kind of her mentality on things now. That the incidents of the ALO incident, basically, has had an effect on her. She doesn't feel as strong as she has before, and she does, care a lot for her friends, and she wants to just take on this more supportive role, a kind of backup role. And we get this shown through the way she fights, in the few fights we get to see, plus in the kind of character arc that she goes through. Um, we see that her nickname right now in the game is the Berserk Healer, because she primarily takes on a healing role, meaning using magic from the background. But if things are getting a bit kind of crazy, she can take out the sword and become the player that she was in SAO to really help people out. But that's her role in the group now, and I like how they explain that, and I like how it's not just, oh, they've relegated her to this role. They give her focus doing that role, and they make a big thing about, like, when she takes the sword out, something big is happening, and the fact that she's needed and she makes a difference when she does it is important. And they show that here with her fight with Zekin, Yuki, and many more kind of times throughout the arc. The other thing that they do is in terms of real world stuff, they established that unlike Kirito, who kind of really knew kind of what he wanted to do, he enjoys playing games and he wants to kind of be responsible for kind of creating games and stuff around games. Asuna had never really known what she wanted because, as we learn, she, yes, comes from this rich family, and in many ways, her parents had kind of planned her whole life out for her. That their main goal, especially her mother, was to marry her off into some other really rich family so she could have this really kind of, rich girl lifestyle, kind of the lifestyle that her mother always wanted. But I'll get more to the mother-daughter relationship as the video progresses. You see that she doesn't really have much of a kind of opinion in her own kind of life. That she, even though it's well aware that she's dating Kirito, is still going to these meetings to kind of basically get proposals from boys and stuff like that. You see the kind of stuff that she has to put up with through being in this situation, and because of the way things are between her and her mother, she kind of very holds herself back. She doesn't want to kind of create an incident. She doesn't want to really get across what she really feels, and kind of retreats more and more into the virtual world. And it was just really effective how they did that. And then the way it kind of ends up resolving itself is that she kind of has to fight to get her point across, and how she does this is kind of by explaining to her mother that, look, I'm not as driven as you are. I don't immediately know straight away that I want to be this kind of, businesswoman and stuff like that, and do all this stuff. The main thing that I want from life is to be there, to be strong enough to support my friends and what they want to do, while still, being successful myself. And how that kind of resolved itself, and Asuna finally kind of communicating with her mother, I think was really well done. And just this idea of, like, it was on purpose, and it's meaningful for her character that's why she kind of takes on this more supporting kind of role as a character. And then on the other side of things, you have that issue with her mother. And I really liked how that kind of played out, in that fundamentally what it came down to is that her mother comes from quite normal background, maybe on the poorer side of things. And she had always wanted more for herself, and now that she has a family, she wants that same level for her daughter, but she kind of can't quite understand that not everyone wants to be the rich person and stuff like that. And I liked how they really explained that Asuna, even though she was the rich girl, as kind of Elizabeth kind of teased her about, doesn't have any of that kind of, stereotypical, rich girl bad traits that you kind of usually expect. That no, she actually has a huge amount of, respect, and all she wants from life is the kind of simple stuff. I really like the explanation for basically why the cabin in the woods with Kirito was so important to her. It's because she had this really great relationship with her grandparents, who are her mother's parents, and they are the ones who obviously come from not a rich background, and she always loved their cabin that they had in the woods in real life, and she always felt like, I suppose, more real there than she felt being like the rich girl and stuff like that. You can see how stressful a lot of this stuff about just trying to become a rich person and stuff like that is for her, going to all these meetings and stuff like that, when all she wants is to just kind of help her friends out, and have these kind of moments, live simply and stuff like that. And I thought that was just really effective how they used the kind of the whole rich girl thing, plus the fact that the mother came from meager beginnings, as a way to kind of resolve this between mother and daughter, in that it took Asuna basically really using the advice of Yuki and fighting to get her point across to her mother that, look, this is important to me. You dismiss it as just a game, but it's important to me. It's so real. So much real stuff has happened to me in here. You have to see it. And the only way I can explain to you how I really feel at this point in time is for you to come in here with me and and basically talk to me in there, and we'll have a real conversation in there, and you can understand that. That worked really well, and just this idea that through Asuna's own house in game, it makes the mother in the game realize basically that, you know, she had always felt somewhat like, um, she always was, I suppose, disappointed with her upbringing and stuff like that. That she wasn't born into a rich family, and she did everything she could to improve her life, and in many ways maybe felt like she had kind of betrayed her parents, by separating herself so much from them and never really going back to visit, because in some ways you get the idea that she thought that there wasn't a place for her there anymore because she kind of left them. But Asuna, through having that better relationship with them, kind of just explains to her that they were so proud of the fact that you made more of yourself than kind of they would have expected, and that there's always a place for her if she needs it, if she ever doesn't want to like work as hard anymore, if she becomes tired or something like that. That was really effectively done, and just how it was her getting this emotional reaction to seeing this location in game that looks like a place from her past. Super effective to get that across and get Asuna's mother to show some of this emotion, and it happening in game just made it all the more powerful. It was a really strong scene and kind of resolution to this small arc, but an important arc in the scheme of this overall book. What am I saying? My Avatar fandom coming out there a bit, but a season arc, whatever you want to say. And yeah, just like how that was resolved was really, really well done, I felt. And just it was great development for Asuna in terms of just, okay, this specific arc, and then just learning so much more about her through her family and through kind of what she went through here. The next thing obviously to bring up is the Sleeping Knights, Yuki and the rest of them. And look, it's one of those things where Yuki is the main one. You get Yuki and a bit on Sione, and the rest of them speak a little bit. But the thing is, they all have kind of similar stories. It would have been, I think I understand why there wasn't so much focus on the rest of them. There was there was one main focus, one they kind of touched upon a little bit, and then the rest were just kind of like, okay, they're part of the group, because it would have been a little bit much, I think, to delve into like 6 terminally ill, young people's backstory and like really heavily go for it. It's a emotional enough, sad enough story, just knowing as what we know about Yuki without having to kind of delve into the rest of it. So I completely get why they did that, and I don't think the story would have the same impact if like it took Asuna learning from the 6 of them combined, rather than just taking Yuki's kind of spirit in like fighting to survive into kind of her life and fighting to get her point across to her mother. And that was just an interesting kind of origin for the kind of the resolution of Asuna's kind of personal arc, in that it took her, taking the advice of someone who was just, because she had such little time left to live, just didn't want to waste time just thinking about stuff, like fearing what people will say or bad reactions, like kind of Asuna was with her mother, how tense things were between them. A lot of that was just purely down to the fear of what would happen if Asuna just talked to her mother. And with Yuki, she doesn't have time to do that, so she just says what she wants and deals with it from there and just tries to be as happy as she can be. And that comes across in like, look, if no one's agreeing with your point, fight to get the cross, because that's the quickest way to do it in this case. And I liked how it was that such a real thing that kind of caused Asuna to kind of have this realization between her and her mother. As for the Sleeping Knights themselves, really kind of cool concept, and another interesting way to kind of explore the virtual world. In that, we've had the first arc GGO kind of dealt with it kind of in terms of this kind of therapy for like a kind of mental issue of like Sinon's fear of guns and stuff like that, as a way for Kirito and Sinon to get a somewhat deal with the fact that they kill people. And this one, on a completely other side of things, as this escape from the pain of like a terminal illness, a way for if there's not a good quality of life for you in the real world because of medical stuff, that you can have something somewhat of a life in the virtual world through the Medicuboid. That was just this really cool, like, this is the potential that this has for the future, and like the thoughts that come into your head about like real world, about how this could really help people. Really well done there. And the idea that it was this group, the Sleeping Knights, who are all gamers who are terminally ill, who come together to have this kind of one final moment where they'll always be remembered together, having done this thing, and that is to clear a floor of new Einkrad in ALO. And the six of them couldn't do it together, so they have Yuki determine someone good enough to be their seventh, so they can all get their names on the monument. Really great kind of original story concept at like the start of the arc. Ultimately, like, it's a cool moment. Like, okay, the memorial, you get the thing that they'll always be remembered for. Just a couple of episodes into the arc, that wasn't the focus. That's not the end game of this arc. It's more about the characters. But the fact that it's such a great concept and how quickly they do it it's really well done. And just how, especially early on, I like the mystery in that, like, if you give this as a concept to someone, or like, Kirito would seem like the most obvious kind of candidate to like be a kind of good character to have around Yuki. But I like how they actually did it where he actually knows so much and is so involved in these games himself. He saw the mystery, saw the reveal before anyone else, and because of that, she specifically didn't choose Kirito, even though he is a more powerful player than Asuna. And that was interesting to me, in that the whole arc, what they did with kind of Kirito and Yuki, in that Kirito never just specifically came out and said what he clearly knew straight away, and Yuki never specifically kind of came out and said like what Kirito knew. It was just like this kind of weird incident of like, Asuna's like, if you really want a good player to help you defeat this, like, it should be Kirito. Why isn't that the case? And when she says this to both of them, they're all kind of both vague, like, I saw something, like they were a product of the virtual world themselves. Yuki says, he found out my secret. And it takes until a few episodes later for her to get that. And Kirito could obviously see straight away from his knowledge of virtual games that she'd spend a lot of time in there. And then, like, definitely I think it's a little bit like, you can debate back and forth about like, was it a good idea to establish that Yuki is more powerful than Kirito? I think they just about did enough to kind of make me like be okay with it, purely because of the line that Elizabeth has earlier on in the kind of arc, when she says that when she says to Asuna, it's actually one of my favorite lines of the whole arc. She kind of talks to Asuna about like, but he'll never be able to fight at like full power, not unless the game is real, not unless people's lives are on the line. That's just who he is. He's always going to be fairly chill about most of the in-game stuff, though still really powerful. But it takes it becoming real for him to become more powerful than anyone else in the entire game. And as well as that, there were other things like the second fight and stuff like that. He didn't use Excalibur. The first fight, he didn't use Excalibur against her either. And I don't think he used dual wield in the first fight as well. So there's still all this other stuff about like how he never went 100% against Yuki and stuff like that. But still, I liked Kirito's involvement in the story, all things considering. in that they used very much the fact that, okay, he wants to get into this idea of mechatronics, the way to take virtual stuff and put it into the real world, to make people from the virtual world experience the real world from that area. So originally, like, obviously the idea was for him to use it with Yui, but then they decided to kind of help Yuki with it. And now that seems to be Kirito's career path. That was good development for him, despite not being heavily involved in the arc overall. And then they give him his really big moment with not helping Asuna defeat the floor boss and help the Sleeping Knights, but just taking out basically most of the raid group to allow them to get in to the boss room first. That was a really cool moment. Seeing him pull out Excalibur and, chop magic in half. It was a really great moment for him. Getting back to the Sleeping Knights themselves, you know, again, like, you could definitely make arguments for how, like, it is a little bit of a missed opportunity that you had these, like, 5, potentially 4, other characters who didn't really get developed all that much. But Yuki, I feel like they developed her enough to the point where I understood the basic mentality of the rest of the group through her. That she was the one in the worst kind of condition, the one who was scheduled to, I suppose, die the earliest. And the way they kind of explored that was really well done. The idea that she also had kind of issues with her own mother. Her own mother was suffering with the same illness that she was. But while Yuki always wanted to be, like, happy and, like, never kind of be sad during the illness, not be that kind of stereotypical sick person, her mother was kind of like, oh, we have to pray and do all this stuff, and, like, very much kind of pressuring, people to kind of, like, fight the illness rather than just, like, embracing life, what's left, and stuff like that. So it was a kind of very realistic portrayal of someone in this condition, in that, having grown up with it her entire life, basically spent most of her life in the game, she had this just amazing perspective on life just because she wanted to make the most of what she had left. She wasn't, she didn't hold back in saying anything. But the one thing she did hold back in saying was, of course, she or the rest of the Sleeping Knights didn't want to get that close to Asuna as they did. And that was the one thing that they all held back from telling her, was the truth about what happened, because they knew that it would kind of be this really emotional thing if they got too attached, and then they revealed that they were all dying, and that's what would split the group up eventually. So I thought that was really well done as well, that she had this kind of rule for herself that she would never kind of hold back things, but she did around Asuna. But the way they kind of then explained, like, through the backstory, that, like, her mother had died a few years previously, and then just, like, last year, Yuki's older sister, who was an even more powerful player in the game, had died as well. And now Yuki was the leader of the Sleeping Knights, and how she kind of began to see Asuna as this kind of other kind of big sister character. I thought that relationship was just really well done. Asuna very much acting as the kind of older, more mature character to kind of help Yuki's interesting perspective on things having to be so real, just dealing with her disease, allowed kind of her to give certain amounts of advice to Asuna. And just some of those scenes where, like, Asuna is bringing the camera around and, like, allowing Yuki to interact in school and stuff like that were just very nice. Like, even though, like, there's a kind of that, like, 5 or 6 minute sequence in one of the last episodes where, like, it's just like the teacher asks Yuki to read, and, like, it's this, like, minute or long thing where it's just Yuki reading. It's a big moment because this is a type of interaction she hasn't had in so long, just because of her illness, and because of, like, technology, because of the virtual world, she's allowed to do this. It just, you have this really big connection to Yuki. So when you got to that last episode and it was revealed that she was dying, and then we saw it happen, and the connection that she had with all the other players and the respect that was in the community was just really well done at getting across that, once again, that while Asuna's mother at the start of the arc couldn't realize why Asuna still went back to the game even after being trapped in there for so long. Um, that there was so much real stuff happened in the game, and that Asuna primarily knew Yuki through the game, like exclusively until the last couple of episodes, but she still had this emotional connection to her as a close friend and almost like sister character, that it was more real than a lot of actual real life friendships. And I thought that was just really effectively done over the course of this arc. In that, definitely, I'm not going to say it's the most emotional thing, the most powerful kind of scenes in like the entire show, any of the arcs, but in terms of just one arc and how focused it was on the idea of emotion and kind of connection of characters, I thought this was definitely right up there. It's one of those arcs where like I think about like a lot of people criticize the show or decide not to watch it because it's just one of those anime, it's just one of those really popular ones with a lot of action in it. There's nothing of substance here. People say that, and I kind of just think about this arc, and I'm just like, there's not that much action in this arc. This arc is almost entirely focused on characters, and development and relationships and the kind of emotion of the situation that they're in. How can you say that this is kind of lesser anime than like other ones? Like, this is a really well written arc, I feel, overall, and it adds to the overall universe. And the main, I suppose, plot focused aspect of this is the kind of reveals that come at the very end. The Metacuboid was originally designed, the concept of it came from Ahihiko Kayaba, and his assistant who watched over him while he was diving into SAO, has allowed this kind of designs to come into play right now, and just this further revealing little bits of information about the most mysterious character in SAO, Kayaba, the villain from the first arc. That he was the villain of the first arc, but I still maintain that I don't think he was like a fundamentally like evil character. He did bad things obviously in SAO, but like I would never really say he was this kind of hateful character who purposely tried to like murder everyone. It was just he believed so strongly in the virtual world that he took it way too far trying to get that point across to everyone else. But the virtual world has done all this other good stuff, as we've seen over the arcs. And then, especially him doing this development in terms of the medical side of things, you can really see how much he believed in it from like good perspective. So, overall, there's not a lot of negatives I have to say about this arc really at all. Maybe they could have used like Klein and those sort of other characters a bit more over the course of the entire season, not just this arc. But in terms of focus, I like that Asuna got a arc basically almost entirely to herself. Like, this arc was about Asuna and Yuki, and then Kirito was just there to help along a little bit. Kind of quite similar, I suppose, to the kind of ALO arc in terms of their involvements, but overall I think it's a really good arc. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the entire Mother's Rosario arc. I suppose that's most of my coverage of the anime done for now. I will have at least 2 or 3 more SAO videos coming out. I want to review the light novels Progressive Volume 1, 2, and 3 coming up as well. So I have 1 and 2. Progressive Volume 3 is out next Tuesday, so I should be getting that next week. So they're going to be the SAO videos coming out soon, and then obviously I'll be doing my usual Avatar stuff, Star Wars Rebels reviews, and so on. So, thanks for watching this video, and bye.